So this is how plants limit their water loss. Plants have waterproof coverings like insects do. However, they can't have a small surface area to volume ratio, which is a huge factor that helps insects limit water loss. They simply cannot survive with a small surface area to volume ratio because they need to photosynthesize to survive. And photosynthesis requires a large surface area to volume ratio so that they can capture as much light as possible. So how do plants limit water loss? Terrestrial plants have a waterproof covering all over the parts of their leaves, and they can close their stomata when necessary. Some plants that have a restricted supply of water have also evolved a range of other adaptations that limit water loss through transpiration. These plants are what we call the xerophytes. Xerophytes are adapted to living in areas where water is in short supply, and without these adaptations, they would not be able to survive in these conditions. So what are these structures that helped these plants survive? First, we have a thick cuticle. In normal leaves, although they have a waxy cuticle, we still have around 10% of water loss of the plant through this waterproof barrier. So these plants have an even thicker cuticle so that less water can escape by this means. We also have the rolling up of leaves. The stomata are confined to the lower epidermis, and the leaves are rolled in a way that protects the lower epidermis from the outside. So this traps a region of still air within the rolled leaf, and this region becomes saturated with water vapor, and it has a very high water potential. So we end up with no water potential gradient between the inside and the outside of the leaf, so no water loss. A third adaptation is hairy leaves, especially on the lower epidermis, traps moist air next to the leaf surface. This also helps by reducing the water potential gradient and reducing water loss by evaporation. A fourth adaptation is the stomata being found in pits or grooves to trap the moist air next to the leaf and reduce the water potential gradient again. And finally, we have a reduced surface area to volume ratio of leaves, which means we will have a slower diffusion rate and a slower rate of evaporation. And this happens by having the leaves being small and circular in cross-section, like for example pine needles, rather than leaves that are broad and flat.